It is the Blue Room. We are back. We are into the midst of the summer now. The major tournaments are creeping up on us, but Everton are there. They're in the news. There's loads going on. I'd like to say joining me to talk about the Toffees this week are Patrick Ridge. Patrick, how you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Been a busy few days, but yeah, like I said, I moved house over the weekend, and then just in between building furniture and whatever, I'll trying to build furniture. Checking the phone to see the latest updates with Everton. It's all just been a bit of a crazy one, and we don't get any quiet weeks, do we?
No, this can be your 40 minutes or so of serenity just to talk about it all. But and also joining us, great to have him back on the podcast is Roger Armstrong. Roger, how are you, mate?
It's Matt. It's lovely to be back. Yeah, I'm all right. I've come back from a positive. For anyone who's not of a political persuasion, a positive meeting with a Labour candidate down in Bournemouth who might even win a seat. So Christ Almighty, goodness knows how this country is changing. I'm delighted to be here with Patrick, resident of Wakefield and fellow Jane McDonald enthusiast. So wonderful.
There we go. That's a podcast for another day. I'm sure we could do. Maybe when Everton are fine and there's not loads of drama around, we can do Jane McDonald and an election chat. But listen, there is loads going on. I'm sure we'll talk about some actual footy and look ahead to the Euros a little bit at the end, and potentially some of the two lads we've got playing in it and their potential roles for their teams. But um, it's been really hard to keep up with, hasn't it? All the takeover stuff. Everybody seems to want to buy Everton. It seems like there's a different name every day. I mean, just as we started recording, I've seen fresh reports about ACAP and them potentially being involved and leading. But before we get into all of that, I just also wanted to get both your thoughts on 777 and the way in which that inevitably felt like it came crashing down to earth. And mainly, Roger, I'll come to you on it first. Does what's happening now and all these interesting parties coming forward kind of make you look back at that and think, my word, that was such a huge bullet dodge for Everton?
Well, of course it was, but we took a while to dodge it. I mean, it was coming at us. We saw it coming. We saw it coming for months and months. Farhad was the only one who didn't. I'll tell you what this makes me want to do is go back to 2016. And where were all these people when Bill was looking for the perfect billionaire? Because Farhad wasn't it. Farhad still isn't it. Farhad has got all the control still. And I feel like what we're witnessing is, do you remember back in the day when Sky was establishing different channels, they had live poker. You watched poker on the telly when you were pissed at like 11 o'clock at night or whatever, and you got back from the boozer and you watched poker on the telly. I just feel like we're watching and we're living through the worst game of poker you've ever played, with sort of blind, deaf, and dumb people playing with huge sums of money that they don't understand. And I think every single party to this, 777, bunch of jokers, they tried it on. The one good thing that Mashiri will think he's taken out of 7-7 is he got them 777 is he got them to put 200 million quid in to keep the lights on. It's about the only positive thing I can say. They were never ever going to be able to buy us, and thankfully it's come to an end. But we can look around, and I'm sure we'll talk about the various interested parties who may or may not be there at the moment. They've all got pluses, they've all got negatives, but I don't think a single one of them stands out, and I don't think a single one of them is playing their cards particularly cleverly.
Yeah, I mean, looking back to that time, Patrick, it did sort of feel. No, I did kind of get tunnel vision, I think, with 777, where it felt like it's them or nobody. If it's not them, we are
Mm.
on the cliff edge, and all the bad things could happen. But now they've gone, like sort of the shafts of light have come in, and you can look at it, from the other side of it all. You do look at them and where Everton are and what they potentially would have done, and think it would have just been a nightmare matchup for us, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. And I think we're going back to the even just a few months ago before, well, I suppose before the end of April when Everton put together that run of results to get safe. I mean, luckily we don't have to consider it, but how different would this situation been if Everton had been relegated and 777 still fell through? Would we have had the same amount of interest as a championship club? Probably not. I think it is all, even Rodger mentioned there, like even the ones that certain people or people maybe more gravitate towards, Andy Bell and George Downing, like I'm sure they're, I know the strong Evertons, I know they've been involved with the club for the last perhaps 4 or 5 months now, potentially. Maybe even in the day-to-day running of it, which is crazy, but they clearly don't have the resources. Like no one really knows what anyone wants with the club. No one's coming out and revealing what they're going to do or what their plans are. And maybe there's reasons behind that are of a legal standing, or maybe it's just because no one really knows. And it just seems that really everyone's just in it for a piece of the stadium, because what else would you be in it for at the minute? Moshiri is going to get the deal that's best for him, and that's probably going to worry a lot of people. It definitely worries me. At the same time, can't really stop him. It's his club. He owns 94% of it. It's his right to do that, I guess. All fans can do is apply pressure as much as possible. But anybody really picking sides at this moment, I'd like a bit with 777, because you just didn't really know. Like, I tried to stay on the fence with 777, but he didn't look good. But then, as Rodger said, on the flip side, you've got to consider they were pumping money, and wherever that money came from, it was being pumped into the club to keep the lights on. At least we've limped through to the summer. At least we've stayed up, and there's, I suppose in that sense, it's not affecting on pitch matters right now. But he's leaving Everton in a state of limbo. Like, I feel for Kevin Felwell. What can they do to sign players? Like, they don't know the budgets. It's like, look at the pre-season chucked together at the last minute. It's just always just up in the air. And that's the entire thing. Maybe that's a good phrase to sum up the entire Farhad Moshiri era, is up in the air. Like, it's all been pie in the sky to an extent. And it is as it's coming to an end. It's still pie in the sky. It's like, will he accept this? Over the weekend, there was reports that I believe two of the bidders had deadlines to meet, and then Farhad Moshiri changed his mind on that, and that was to accept other bids coming in, and now he's going to go off and decide for all of them. Like I say, he has the right to do it, but doesn't make it any easier to accept as fans, does it? And trying not to be worried, because I think, it's a better position to be in than going back to the original point than if we'd have gone down. Or it's probably a better position to be in than being tied to 777 anymore. I don't believe those debts need paying back starting until 2026, and they're obviously unsecured anyway. So from that side, maybe Moshiri has played a blinder there. But we need something quickly. But like I'm with Rodger, I can't really see a standout candidate, so I'm not going to go and say, oh, we need these people to come in, or we need it to be that person. I just don't know at the minute. No one's done any convincing yet, have they? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, you sounded like quite downbeat there, and I'm not as well versed in this sort of stuff as you lads by any means, but like, it's felt to me like I felt quite positive seeing. This me being totally naive about the situation, but I felt quite positive, like seeing some of the names coming forward, some of the parties that could potentially come in and buy us, compared to 777, and I felt a lot more positive about the situation in general, because, it just felt like, that if they came in, took us over, it would have been more debt, it would have been more of the same, it would have been going down that path, which has sort of led us to where we are now. I mean, Rodger, like just in general, like, are you feeling much better about the situation of the football club, a bit better, about the same, or was it hard to kind of quantify?
I think it's really hard to quantify, because I'm still not convinced we're at the bottom. I'm sorry, and I'm notorious for being a half-empty kind of guy. And I know we've stayed up the last two seasons, and this season was an absolute miracle with the points deduction, and that absurd run of 13 games without a win that we went on. I really, really hope this is the bottom, and I really hope that a sensible buyer, a practical, well-informed buyer comes in. And I do worry still, because we will face a much more competitive Premier League next season. The quality of the teams coming up is much better than the teams that they've replaced. I don't have a great deal of sympathy for Kevin Thelwell. I'm not his greatest fan, but I do understand that he doesn't have much of a budget to play with. But my concern is that there isn't a standout candidate. And my concern is that there's another one of these windows of opportunity that Moshiri talked about. Because what we need to bear in mind, I think, is two or three things. Number one, how long is approval going to take, even if somebody becomes the preferred bidder? Whether it's Bell and Downing, whether it's this guy Manukian, whether it turns out to be ACAP, which I have on my notes, ACAP no chance, and then I checked Twitter just before coming on here, and it's they're the preferred bidder. Of course they are, because we're living in this Farhad Moshiri alternative universe. So how long will it take to get approval for a takeover actually to happen? What, if any, impact will that have on summer transfer budgets and funding? And also critically, we mentioned about general election just sort of in passing at the beginning, but once this election happens, there's going to be a whole queue of people, organizations and cities with demands for money from hopefully a Labour government for investment in local infrastructure. And we should be at the front of the queue for that, for development of the North Docks and the 10 streets, et cetera, linked to this stadium. But if we don't have our shit together on our ducks in a row, then we might miss out and the money might go elsewhere. So time waits for no man. And I'm desperate to be optimistic, Matt. I really am. I just wish one of these people, one of these groups stood out. And I wish one of them had actually had the balls to come out in public. I don't buy this, and for legal reasons we can't say this, and for legal reasons that and the other. That's just nonsense. Whoever's advising these groups, I don't think anybody's advising them particularly well, because if I was advising Bell and Down, I'd be having meetings with the fans forum. I'd be coming on here. I'd be coming on, fan media. I'd be talking to the Echo. I'd be out there in public, because I've been involved in takeovers, corporate takeovers, on either side of the fence. And the one thing you have to do is lobby shareholders and lobby stakeholders. Football club, we are, and not us three, but the tens of thousands of season ticket holders, the home and away match going fans, and the hundreds of thousands, millions of Everton fans around the world. They're the ones that any potential bidder should be lobbying. And the fact that none of them have come out, and they're kind of leaking shit here, there, and everywhere to favoured journalists is absolute nonsense. If I want to win the hearts and minds of Evertonians, then I'll be on every single Everton fan podcast I can possibly get on. And I'll be doing interviews with Sky News and the Liverpool Echo and wherever I have to be to put my case. And not one of them's doing it. So surprisingly enough, we're in an election, and it seems like we're having an election for Everton owners.
Yeah. I mean, just to come back to you on that, would they not think of it, you both have alluded to there about Farah Mashiri, it is his train set, he can do what he wants with it. Like, so would, in a sense, that matter coming out and speaking to people before you even get to do, is it not just something you do after it, or do you think it's important to get in there early and get across?
I think it's really important to sell to the people that are going to be your clients. I know it's a horrible word in modern football. Mashiri's not going to walk away with much cash here. 777, we're giving him 60 million quid if he's lucky, right? He's taken a bath on virtually everything, and he'll be lucky to walk away with 20 or 30 million quid. So these are immaterial sums of money in the scope of his wealth, realistically, right? He needs a deal that can actually happen. He needs a transaction that's going to go through, and that isn't going to result in fans protesting at the first game of the season with A cap out banners or whatever it is. So I think it's definitely in his interest. And if he wants a legacy of any sort, the man has bought us a stadium, thank you very much indeed. And he has sunk 800, 900 million into the football club. But I think it's in his interests that this deal goes through smoothly. And in order to do that, the fans have to be on side. You look at what happens with, managerial appointments. Fans have to be behind the team. And have to be behind the club. They're the investors. They're the people who are going to be here through thick and thin. And if you piss your fan base off, or you don't take them with you to start with, you look at what's happened with other takeovers. You look at what's happened across the park with Hicks and Gillette. If the fans aren't behind it, you're wasting your time.
Sort of with that in mind, then, Patrick, have you kind of been surprised by how many names we've seen emerge over the last few days? It's not just very tentative reports either. This is it. It's serious, credible journalists. From the BBC, from the Athletic, from the Echo, who were reporting these very concrete links to a lot of big names, a lot of people from different backgrounds. It's such a broad church. I mean, I'm stunned that so many people are seemingly so desperate to get involved.
Yeah, I think, and I think you can look at that two ways. Like, you can either look at it, and I think the probably answer is somewhere in the middle. Like a few are going to be a centrist if we're going back to the election debate, but it's somewhere down there, in the sense of, I think there's that's definitely a positive, because whatever their reasons are, probably to me it's the stadium. I can't see any. It's the stadium. It's a Premier League club. And there is potential there. And if it can just get stability, and then that stadium gets finished, and then it's going to be I don't think it's going to be the magical turnaround as such, but, down the line, you're looking 4 or 5, 10 years down the line, that's big money. On
But
the
without the fan base with you, Patrick,
Yeah.
sorry to jump in. If you ain't got the fan base with you, and people aren't going to go and pay these new season ticket prices, and the football's not going to be any good, and we aren't going to be in the Premier League, your stadium's not worth shit. You know,
Well,
look at Sunderland, look at Derby. They had brand new stadiums 10, 20 years ago, and what's become of them?
yeah. So as I said, that's the flip side of it, and that's why I agree with the PR offensive that maybe some of these should go. It's what 777 didn't do well. They said no, we're going to keep quiet. Yet all the stories that were coming out were negative, 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 and even if like you can only assume that they didn't actually have any positive stuff to share, but like the one positive they maybe would have had would be their football operation. You know, Johan Spors is a highly regarded sporting director. Newcastle want him. Mladen Storbaz, who was their head of data, he's now moved to Barnsley to be sporting director. Again, that was a bit of a worrying sign when he jumped ship to go to Barnsley, who was struggling in not struggling in League One, but financially struggling anyway, at least. So 777 just never got on the charm offensive, did they? They never really did anything. They spoke to a few I know they spoke to a few fan groups, they spoke to people we all know and
They put
behind
that
the
weird
scenes.
statements on the club website, didn't they? Which
Yeah,
like
exactly. And that
Alan
was,
Ball
was
quote
it.
at the end, which is
Yeah, there was
clearly fed to them.
yeah, there was nothing even like you could have got Johan Spors. You could have even done it cleverly and just released it through your official channels of something like 777's plan for the future and the footballing plan, like not the financial plan, like the footballing model, the data model, whatever it is. And you can only assume, well, actually, it was all just built on sand. So I do think that I do agree with Rodger there. I think this is what these groups could do. The one bidder that has done it is John Textor, in the sense of he kind of went on, he got the ball rolling, and he's an American businessman. He's done that before with other clubs. He kind of knows what he's doing there, but I don't think I think we all thought that's probably not the one likely to go through, maybe because of circumstance with his shares at Palace, but also you also do get the feeling that sometimes with these things, it's the ones who shout the loudest don't actually get it in the end, and they're never really going to get it. And I don't think Texter's still even made a bid necessarily. Again, I don't know if it's because he can't do, because if he's got those shares in Palace, and without that, he can't buy another Premier League club. And obviously, he'd have to manage to sell those shares. And who's going to sell? He wants to get out of Palace, a bit like Mashiri wanted to get out of Arsenal, because he has a stake, but he has no control. So who's going to buy those off him and have no control? So it's okay him doing the PR offensive, which he did, saying Everton's an amazing club, like, you know, who wouldn't want to buy Everton? But that's the equivalent of me going, who wouldn't want to buy Everton, really, in the grand scheme of things, if he can't buy it anyway. So I guess the others, I'm not defending them. This is where I agree with Rodger. It's like it would be nice to see a PR push, just something from, especially the Evertonians, you know, Andy Bell, George Downing. A lot of it is being pushed as, yeah, they're Evertonians, they have the best interests at the club at heart. Well, look, we had an Evertonian in charge for the best part of 30 years, and
100%.
whether you agreed with everything he did, or disagreed, or hated everything he did, or liked everything he did, you know, one thing that no one doubts is he was an Evertonian. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the best thing for the club anyway. They've got to have a smart businessman. I'm sure those two do, you know. But again, I've seen reports that it was, and I think it was Mick Greenall, obviously, who's brilliant on this podcast a lot, when the reports came out about actually how that bid was put together. And obviously, it's only reports at the minute, but you know that a lot of it would be based on debt, leveraging the debt, and then some of it would be equity. George would probably know more about it than me in that sense, from a business perspective. But that's only thought that made you think, well, it's not the dream bid that it was being sold as at first, which is like it's these two with MSD as the funding vehicle behind them. They're really just providing the debt, you know, to do it. So, and that's more debt onto the club, and then that could be massive interest rates. And then the Manukin bid is that, if that's how you say it, the kind of the global consortium that's been sold at what, 400 million all equity.
Want
But
the Saudi royal involved,
yeah,
apparently.
but they have no experience in football, and you know that's fine. You could get again, and then the Saudi Arabia thing that opens up more questions and more scrutiny, and people will be doing a lot of deleted tweets, I think. But then you could get PIF, who, you know, do know what they're doing, or seem to know what they're doing with Newcastle, or you could get the Saudi Arabian member of the royal family that Sheffield United got, who, you know, God knows what's happened to them. So I think we're in a position as a club where the vultures have been circling for a while, and now we're seeing who the vultures are. They all seem to wait to give 777 enough rope to hang themselves. And 777, in fairness, they went all the way there and did it, and they fulfilled their obligation. Maybe the only obligation they fulfilled was paying what they agreed with Farhad Moshiri through the season. And that may have come at the expense of other football clubs. Who knows? It may come at the expense of their entire business model in the end. And then maybe the other ones, I ain't really got a defense of MSP. I don't get why MSP is still interested. They could have activated a month ago. It's like, if they wanted the club, they could have taken control of the club. I don't think they do want control of the club. I think they just want the piece of the stadium, don't they? So while I agree with Rodger on a lot, I also agree with you, Matt, that we're in a better position than I thought we would be in terms of the amount of bidders, or the amount of interest, I should say. But whether these people are actually good candidates, I'm not in a position to judge.
I think it's interesting
what
you're saying.
What do you make of the Roma? What do you make of the Roma link, or is that, sorry, Matt? Is that, do you think that's dead? Because I mean, it's not practical, is it, to own two clubs in UEFA competitions? Not that Everton are likely to.
Yeah, I mean,
troubling UEFA contest.
Yeah, that'd be the same kind of position as Textor in a way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Freaking again. I think it was reported in Italy over the weekend that actually, while he's in talks, he doesn't want full control of the club. He wants a stake. I think we're probably, you know what? Maybe the most likely thing is, I don't know how, but maybe there's going to be a case where we have 3 or 4 different owners, different parties having a share in us in some way. And I think the main thing that anybody needs to do gets in, and this is what they should be selling to the fans, is like, Everton need to consolidate the debt, don't they? That's the main thing. All the debt needs to go to one place and try and get it paid off. And you're not like, right, but how are they going to do that? Are rights and media funding going to agree to that big lump payoff? Their entire business model is based on long-term debt occurring high interest. So from that side, again, people with more knowledge, a bit more business perspective from me would be able to chip in on that. But again, I do think it's more positive than only having 777 or only having MSP. At least there seems to be other interest, at least.
It's interesting, like what you're saying about Mick and how he was sort of looking at the bid and how it wasn't necessarily big idea, the way it was broken down. Do you not sort of look at Everton though, Rodger, and like, listen, we'd all love the perfect person to come in and wipe the deck clean and start building the club, and with great knowledge of football. But is this just a situation we're in where we are a club in a bit of a mess, and as a result, we're not going to get that white knight who's going to come in? Like, it feels, looking at these candidates and reading a bit about them, it feels most likely to me that most of them, if not all of them, will be coming into Everton with a view of, in the short term, cleaning the club up, protecting their investments in the case of some MSP, making sure that their money doesn't go, up the wall effectively, and then turning the club around in 2 or 3 years' time to somebody else. It doesn't feel like anyone's coming in now with the idea of making Everton great for the next 20, 30 years. It feels very much like a short to medium term operation.
I think that's a really, really good point, because we are still a distressed asset, overburdened with debt. Whether or not you include the 7-7 debt, but 580, 700 million of debt, it's a lot of money still to pay on the stadium. So we're a distressed asset. We've got a load of debt, and we're also an underperforming Premier League club in threat of relegation with a poor squad that requires investment. So we're not that attractive, and therefore we need sorting out financially. Yes, 100%. We need someone who can do that, someone who can address that, consolidate it, and come up with a real plan, either to repay them in full and step in, so that we're no longer paying 10, 12% interest rates on 200 million quid. But more than anything, we need footballing expertise. And this is the issue I've got with Bell and Downing. I'm sure they're lovely guys. I'm sure they're lifetime Evertonians, and they've been successful businessmen. They don't know shit about running a football club. I'm sorry, they don't. They've run a stockbroker, and they've built a load of, been a property developer. That does not equip you to run a football club, just like being a theatrical impresario doesn't equip you to run a football club. Now, if this were, I don't know, let's pick a name. Who could we say? If we were going to have Jose Mourinho come in, not necessarily manage, but be our sporting director, and he was going to bring a team of football experts in that were going to run the footballing operations with Enzo Maresca as the manager. And if there was we need a footballing plan as well as a financial plan. And I'm not sure we're going to get either at the moment. I think we're going to fall between two stools. And we are, we're a distressed asset and we're a distressed football club that isn't guaranteed Premier League status forevermore. And also we're underperforming commercially, right? Now, hopefully the stadium addresses that, but the stadium won't address that if people won't buy tickets, and if we don't merchandise properly, and if we don't get good sponsorship deals, and if we don't get the right partners in. So commercially, financially, and footballing, we are in a distressed state. And I think you're right, Matt. We need someone who's going to take a 3 to 5 year plan to turn the business around and the footballing operations around, so that then we can be sold to someone who can say, right, I'll give you £1 billion for Everton now, because I'm going to turn them into a Champions League club in 5 years' time from 5 years' time, if that makes sense.
I think just sorry, Matt, on that point, Rodger, like maybe that is the thing that you could look at specifically with Andy Bell and George Downey, I guess, would be that, and this is maybe where the Evertonian side comes into it, but maybe anyone who's looking at it and they think, well, we've got the lessons here from Farhad Moshiri didn't know anything about running a football club, and the evidence is right in front of us, and we're talking about it right now. I think everyone looks at Farhad Moshiri and go, what he did wrong was the people he then put in charge who did know what to do, he didn't let them do what they were meant to do in the first place. To an extent. And then some of them, it's like, well, were they even ever that good in the first place? I think, look, Marcel Brands is I find it hard to believe, given he was one of the most highly rated sporting directors in European football. Like, I'm sure he does know what he's doing, but also I don't think he ever quite got the English game either. I think there's a bit of both, and both things can be true. But at the same time, like, we do know that he wasn't really allowed to do everything, in the sense of he was happy to sit and take a new contract and get paid however many millions he was getting a season, but I would be. But, when you've got someone interfering with you, or when you've got your owner ringing up at 2 a.m. to try and convince you to, was it Gareth Bale who were trying to buy, or 3 a.m. ringing him up saying, buy this player, get this player who's 34 and going to retire, we'll get him to come and pay him 200 grand a week. Like, that's not good for anybody. So let's say hypothetically it was Andy Bell and George Downing, and their plan to me would probably be, the business model would be, like Matt said, like we both said, get in and flip it. Get that stadium finished, get that investment in, and they do have confidence in the sense of, we will learn from Farhad Moshiri's mistakes, and where Evertonians, we at least know, we know the situation inside out. It's not like someone totally new. Maybe they'd think, we do trust Kevin Felwell to do that job, or we are going to go out and get someone that we do trust to do it, and what we're going to do is we're going to leave him to it, rather than, or her to it, rather than interfere. Everton need a top class CEO. Nothing against Colin Chong, but they needed a top class CEO for the last decade. Well, going on past a decade now. That's a massive thing. Look at Man United. Look at the first thing, whether you agree with everything that Jim Ratcliffe's doing or not. I definitely don't, at Man United and Ineos. But the first thing they actually went and did is getting someone as CEO, didn't they? What they saw as a top CEO. That is immediately, that's meant to improve your commercial performance, and that's just as important to me as the football inside, because it all builds into one. If we had a better commercial performance, we wouldn't have got the points deductions, even with the massive investment in the stadium and the massive debt that incurred. It still came back to poor commercial performance, poor planning, not having alternatives for USM, not having signing an agreement with USM that meant if you suspended it, you couldn't go out and get anyone for the following season either, unless it was done. And then people who were even involved in that, like as we saw in the second case, the person who was meant to be in charge of that at this time, at least when the case was heard, didn't actually know if that was the case. So he was asked, or I can't remember his name now, is it Marinak, was asked if the suspension meant that we couldn't go out and get anyone else, and he went, well, I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. It's like Jesus Christ, like, this is your job. So, and that's it's just the entire thing again sums up Farhad Moshiri's tenure. It's just all up in the air, airy fairy stuff. So maybe there is a bid in the coming days that more information comes out, maybe in the next week or so, as parties try to sell themselves different ways. I do wish they come on the Blue Room or Toffee TV or whoever else, other fan channels or fan media, and wish they talk to me on my Substack and be like, this is what we want to do. But it's just probably not going to happen. It should happen. You should sell yourselves and win those hearts and minds. but maybe they're going to do it through Sky Sports, because in their mind they'll get it out to Sky Sports, and that's getting it out to more people and not just Evertonians. I don't know where really they should be focusing on Evertonians. So, who knows? Or maybe George Bell and Andy Downing are just Andy Bell and George Downing, sorry, are just thinking we're Evertonians and it's enough. I really don't know.
Just no notes to Farhad Moshiri again. To Jim White. Can't be doing that again.
Yeah.
It's that was a tough time. But like you're so right, both of you. What you like I did a piece today. It's a year ago today that Denise Barrett Baxendale, Grant Ingles, and Graham Sharp stepped down, and we got the infamous a decision's going to be made on Bill in 48 hours.
And it was never made. They missed their own self-imposed deadline.
Yeah. But like that, and like when I was writing that piece, like I went on the Everton website to look at the board members just to check I got it right. And it's like you've got an owner, Farhad Moshiri, self-appointed himself to the board when all this happened in June 2023. And he obviously wants to go out. You've got Colin Chong, as you mentioned there, Patrick, who was brought in to do something completely different. He's had so many different jobs roles. And I think he's still technically the interim CEO, isn't he? So you've got an interim CEO. And you've got, is it Stapleton, the other fella, who like he's not even got a picture on the website to go with his bio or anything like that. So like there's such a huge dearth of leadership at the
top of the chairperson. I know it's for awful reasons, but there isn't a chairperson there.
So like, and it's like that's frustrating and like mad as we try and go day to day now. But I suppose if you're, coming into the football club and you want to take over, like there is a bit of a blank atmosphere as well, I suppose, isn't it? To bring in your own people, to bring in people you think are good at the football side of it, and not cause loads of disruption and have to sack people you think not necessarily good enough. But it's in the same situation we've been in the last year or so. But just to sort of wrap this up before we have a chat about the Euros, of the names that mentioned, Rodger, so we've obviously got MSP, Solo, you've got Bell and Downing, you've got Vatch and his Saudi mates, you've got Texter, who looks sort of out the frame, you've got Friedkin. I mean, of all of them, is the one that's jumping out at you that you'd prefer at the moment, or are we just simply not heard enough from any of them yet to make an informed decision?
I don't think we have, but let me just make two very quick points on what you said. I think you're spot on with the board and the total, sort of stooges that are there. So when the club says something, I don't understand. I've said this on other podcasts, but I don't understand what the football club is. So when Everton Football Club make a statement, there's never a name to it. I don't understand who the football club is. And that's appalling. That's just an insult to every single fan. Everton Football Club. What Everton Football Club said about 777 and that falling apart was ridiculous. Who wrote that? It's Farhad Moshiri. Can we stop messing around? Farhad Moshiri's saying things. Everton Football Club aren't saying things. And whilst I never was really a big Sean Dyche fan, he deserves a huge amount of credit because he's the only one who came out and fronted up for Everton Football Club in the last season. And I take my hat off to him. I know the football wasn't great, but he got us to stay up. But he actually stood up for Everton Football Club and fronted up week in, week out at press conferences. Well done to him. I think the most likely outcome, in answer to your question, is that Bell and Downing will get it. But the concern is that they're the kind of front men for somebody else's money, and we'll never really know who. I like the idea of Vatch, Manukian, and these multiple sources of wealth. I don't care whether it's an Evertonian or not, but I want people with good footballing contacts who are going to. Whilst I said we need the finances and we need the commercial side sorting, the biggest thing we need sorting is the footballing side, because if we don't sort that, we're down in the Championship, and you don't come back easily from there.
And I mean, I forgot to mention ACAP as well, Patrick, too, as I said, the reports from the Telegraph just we were about to start recording this saying that the front runners, it felt like
yes.
I don't know loads about them, but weren't they going to collapse a few weeks ago or something? They
can't. If you look at the Leadenhall, inquiry outcome verdict, whatever it is, they're tied in with 777. They can't go spending hundreds of millions of pounds on a football club. I mean, it's the only angle is that they're trying to get 777's money back, but they can't possibly come in. Surely not. That obviously means they will, but
yeah, it's crazy. Like I can't put my neck. I can't honestly, I can't judge like everything when Yeah, and they've all like it's not any rhyme or reason to it, and they are all reliable reporters. So it's not that I'm doubting them, but I like they're all coming from different sources as well. It's like
Yeah,
one of them goes to the Telegraph, and the other one's like, "Oh, give the Guardian a bell." Do you know what I mean? Or
Exactly.
give the Times a ring. That's where it is frustrating. Just come out. We're in 2024. We're in the social media age. Just come out and speak. Come out and speak and say, "Yeah, I'd like to buy the club." But as I said before, it's almost those who shout the loudest who don't get it over the line in a lot of cases. And I don't know whether people just prefer to keep the powder dry at that level. And maybe there's still someone else to come out of the woodwork. Who knows?
oh God, yeah. I'm sure there will be. But probably by the time we finish this podcast, there'll be another leading contender. But let's talk about some actual footy. Euros start on Friday. We've got a couple of big name representatives, obviously Jordan Pickford for England and Anna for Belgium. Patrick, you looking forward to the tournament? I've not really quite got the buzz yet, but I've not really. I'm going to set some time aside tomorrow to read some previews and listen to some podcasts looking ahead to it. But Euros are always quite fun, aren't they? I think.
Yeah, I am looking forward to it. Like it's just that thing where you get into that major tournament mode very quickly, like, and it has just crept up. Like I can't say like I'm losing sleep over. I'm so excited, but I am looking forward to having some football to watch where there's genuinely like nothing. I want England to do well, but I'm not going to be down in the dumps if they don't. But you know, I am just looking forward to having football where there's just nothing on it. It was nice at the end of the season. Like, if there'd have been that Luton game, I've not enjoyed a game more in 3 years than that. It was just like there was a one boring 1-1 draw, but at least it was just nice and relaxed. And the Arsenal game to an extent, actually, Everton played very well in that. So yeah, looking forward to that. Obviously always hope Pickford does well. It's gone quiet, hasn't it, massively over the last season since Ramsdale got dropped. Mikel Arteta's decision there, the right decision, put to bed a lot of this nonsense about Pickford's England place. And Onana, for more than one reason, I hope he does really well. I hope he does well because I like him as a player. I think he suits that Belgian team probably more than he suits the Everton team. I know he can be frustrating, but Everton need good money for him as well. They're still like the situation, and I think that's more than just having to sell for PSR's sake as well. Like they do have to sell for PSR, but I think it's the right time for the club and the player to part ways under this manager. That's unfortunately a case of where we are short-term thinking to an extent. I'm not Sean Dyche's biggest fan, but he's going to be here and he deserves to be here for what he did last season. And I think Onana just probably isn't the player that he's not going to get to be the player that we think he can be or that he thinks he can be under Sean Dyche anyway. And that's not really criticism of either of them. It is what it is. And Everton are in a situation where that 60 million, if they could get it, or 50 million, whatever it may be, is a lot better in their pockets than the player right now, unfortunately. So yeah, if he has a good start to the tournament, could there be a situation? I still think there's going to be leeway with PSR. People keep saying about this June 30th deadline. Yes, but if you read the Forest case, the independent commission did set a bit of a precedent to say they would give teams they would have given Forest leeway if they'd have sold Johnson in July. They didn't. They said by the 24th of July when the offer came in from one of the second offer or the third offer from Brentford, even if Forest had sold him then, they'd have got some like grace for it. So I think given how many teams could be facing problems with PSR, the Premier League will be they'll have a bit of common sense given there's a major tournament on. So I'm not as worried about that as such. So yeah, just looking forward to the footy. I'm doing tons of previews for it for work and for the More Than a Game Substack as well. So people, please check that out if you wanted to read the previews tomorrow, Matt. But yeah, we've got at least some. I think there's going to be some. I'm really looking forward to seeing France play, and I'm actually curious to see how Germany do as well. Should be a good tournament.
Yeah, just on an honor, Rodger. There's almost something comforting this week about having one of our Belgian stars mouthing off on international duty about how they want to use this as a stage to, just put me back to all those times with Fellaini and Morales and
yeah.
Lukaku as well. Obviously, they've all been down there. But I mean, are you looking forward to it, Nathan? How do you think our lads are going to get on?
I am. I like the Euros almost more than the World Cup, but for different reasons. Because it's the sides are very well matched.
Mm.
I don't think there's a group where there's a whipping boy. where sometimes in the World Cup there is, whether it's Panama or whoever, Costa Rica, it doesn't really matter. But I think all the games have got some jeopardy in, and everybody's a dangerous opponent, whether it's Albania or Georgia, right? You might put at the bottom of the pile. I think England have a fantastic chance, and when I'm positive about Everton, it's rare, but when I'm positive about England, it's even rarer. But if you think about a front four of Kane and Bellingham and Saka and Foden, and we still haven't got Cole Palmer in it, and then there's Declan Rice. I'm not sure about Trent Alexander-Arnold playing central midfield. I think that could be a problem. I think we struggle at the back. But I think England going forward have the best attack in the tournament. I think probably France have the most balanced team coming to fruition, and Mbappe leading them. Spain, dangerous. Italy, dangerous. Germany, don't know. The Dutch, don't know. But there's a lot of teams in there. You know, there's a lot of teams of very similar ability, and it should be competitive football. And I hope that groups get off to a decent start. If the group games start with a 0-0 here and a draw there, and then there's all kinds of tactical shit going on, it's quite boring to watch, you know. So I'm optimistic and looking forward to some football without worrying too much about Everton and what are the other teams doing? How did Luton get on today? You know?
Still
Yeah.
scarred, yeah. I don't know about you guys, but just I was a bit, I suppose what put me, I don't know why it shouldn't affect me like I did, but I got really annoyed about Southgate's decision on Branthwaite, like hugely. It's just a really poor decision, but I did have a feeling it was coming. Like,
I thought it was coming. I completely understand why he did it.
Yeah.
I understand why he did it, because he loves Lewis Dunk, and Lewis Dunk has stepped in to beat Maguire, and he knows Joe Gomez from back in the day. I understand the decision. I don't agree with it, but it was definitely going to happen.
I don't know about you. I wanted him to get that for the reward for his season. And like, I did think Everton did right putting out that little, not statement, that tweet that they did saying, like, you know, got a bit salty at the end saying Evertonians know how good you are. And I'm a bit, I see where I'm coming from. I don't know if you do, Matt, with Southgate, but it's that thing of like, actually, it's a bit like the Dijksheimer earlier in the season. It's like, yeah, I see why he's playing this style of football, but you know what? If you were a bit more attacking or changed your style of football a bit, like he did at the end of the season, we might get results. It's like,
I think he's made a bit of a mistake by not taking a defender who's either not injured or has been injured a lot this season. Like Stones missed training again today, didn't he? Like I think it was with a virus, but he just seems like one of those players who's just always out with something. Like I think Conte has played right back all year, hasn't he? As well. Gay's been injured loads. I think Dunk is currently injured. Like, yeah. Listen, I'm not majorly fussed on England, but I think for me, like, I never felt he was going to get in when after he got called up the first time, and he didn't play a minute in those two games. And it was a bit like, I think he's called him up, having watched him and then seen him at close quarters and training, and thought maybe there's something there. But like, international football's mad, isn't it? Like, I think is it Deschamps is going to play Saliba because he wants to play Canate and Upamecano. Like, international managers have these different ideas and see players differently to the club managers. So. Listen, that's not me saying Bradford's Saliba level by any means, but I think you just have these mad little complexes sometimes. But
I've got my tweet ready, my salty tweet ready for when Lewis Dunk scores an own goal against Serbia. I'm ready for it. Get exposed in a highlight like he did against Lukaku in March. Like, yeah, I'm just thinking that's what I've seen. The defense is like, Branthwaite doesn't play in a high line for Everton. He's like, yeah, but Branthwaite can run. I know Lewis Dunk isn't quick. And I like Lewis Dunk. I'd have taken him, but like maybe not at the expense of Branthwaite, I guess. But just kind of put a dampener on it for me.
Do you think it's more or less likely now that Branthwaite gets sold now that he's not at the Euros? Because obviously his value in the market has kind of gone down because he's not playing in this showcase event. So is it positive or negative for Everton that he's not gone?
Yeah,
I think in this data-driven world, especially, and there's enough evidence from the season. What did he play? 36 games and started 4 or 35 of them in the Premier League. I think if a team wants him, they're not going to be deterred by him not getting in the England squad. But I guess in terms of, we go back to
his
PR.
Price, though.
Yeah, we go back to PR again. Can Everton, there's not that, he's an England international playing at the Euros, so, but Everton just have to hold firm, I guess, if they can afford to.
it's one of
Whoever
them.
Everton is that's holding firm, as
Yeah.
discussed. Who is it that's holding firm in these negotiations?
And like him, just not like the actual physical logistics
Yeah.
of him not being at a tournament makes it easier, I suppose, doesn't it? To if someone
There is
wants to
that.
do a deal for him, then they could. Like I know in the past they've had like agents going into the camp and they come away from the camp to do medicals, but it feels like it's less and less a thing now. It feels like players just wait until after the tournament or get it done before. So yeah, it feels like it means that a deal might be more likely to get done, but get done sooner, but maybe for less price as well. So not good for us, really. I'd end up saying on that point of view.
Dash needs to get him away on a training camp to Butlins or wherever we can afford.
Yeah. There's
A
yeah, that pre-season sensational, isn't it?
Pre-season in
Absolutely.
Skegness. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But apparently they're going to Ireland, which could be fun as well. So I mean, I'm sure there'll be plenty of Blues going over there. But listen, lads, we'll wrap it up there now. I've kept you quite late tonight, but I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate your insights into all the takeover stuff, and I'm sure our listeners do as well. Do leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts on all that. Have you got any questions? Have you got any thoughts on who you'd like to see come in and take over Everton? It'd be great to get people's insights on that as well. But cheers to Rodger, cheers to Patric. Up the toffees. We'll speak to you again soon.